Hello and welcome back to the Bird's Eye View podcast. We are here shortly after the Toronto Blue Jays have struck yet again. This time it is for a pair of funky relievers. I'm your host, Zach Worden, joined as always by Jori Negin-Shecter. And Jori, are you ready to get down and do your thing with Sidearm Nation, Tyler Rogers and Chase Lee?
Yes, it's time to get funky. These Blue Jays have decided they've got the funk and every other funk kind of pun you can think of here. Yes, the Blue Jays go out and get a couple of weirdos, most notably Tyler Rogers, formerly of the New York Mets. Super interesting ad, very different ad. Just in terms of what you're going to see around baseball these days, this is a one of one reliever, a one of one pitcher, and brings a super different element to this Blue Jays pitching staff.
You know, so in the 2020 World Series, the Rays and the Dodgers, I don't know if you'll remember this, but this is something that has stuck in my brain for a very long time. I have it saved on my phone because it's stuck in my brain that much. But during the 2020 World Series, there was the Rays pitching clock. Do you remember this graphic where they
I
had the
do.
clock with all of the Rays arms kind of put around there? Now the Blue Jays have gone out and have added, guys who throw from every hour on the clock, and the graphic didn't have the bottom of the clock, which is where, Tyler Rogers is. It's the lowest, or the lowest release point in baseball. He's basically throwing the ball from the ground, like underhanding it at the hitters. And Chase Lee, I think it was the fourth lowest release point in baseball. So it's crazy the way that they have clearly committed to this different looks. And of course, Trey Savage comes into that conversation. I think of guys in the minor league system, right? Like Kai Peterson is kind of in that group. And I know Shai Davidi wrote about it recently, kind of how the organization has committed to these different looks. And it's cool, it's fun. Obviously they were seemingly more motivated to grab kind of one of the top starters, whether it was Helsley, Diaz, Williams, Suarez, who ends up coming off the board since we last talked. But Rogers, I think a pretty good fallback. He turns 35 in the next few days here, but I mean, you want to talk about a guy who gets outs consistently and doesn't need the fountain of youth to do it. He's he's up there. He's throwing like 83-mile-per-hour sinkers, but man, do they move? Man, does the slider move? I don't think this is going to be your 2026 closer, but I would imagine this is going to be pretty close to your 2026 fireman.
Yeah, this is going to be a leverage arm for these Blue Jays. A guy that, if they need a ground ball, not necessarily a strikeout, but if they need a ground ball, there is perhaps nobody in baseball better at doing that than Rogers here. It's just, I think, super fascinating. It doesn't jump off the page in the same way. It doesn't really make you go, wow. But, even to that end, there's just so much about this signing, I think, that's really just fascinating. And of course, the trade for Lee as well kind of falls in the same bucket. Now, big difference. One of these guys you're trading, a nothing prospect, no disrespect, and then the other one, you're handing 30 odd million bucks to. It's a very different set of circumstances in terms of acquisition, but there's clearly some kind of, you know, target or identification that the Blue Jays have gone out and done here. And they clearly wanted, first they wanted to add velo. They've added that velo in a guy like a Louis Varland. Now the goal is to add some funk, and the funkiest of funky guys is Tyler Rogers.
Yeah, it's interesting that this is the way they go. I mean, like we can do the specifics, right? Like 3 years, 37 million has a vesting option for 48 million. I guess we don't know what the vesting portion of that deal is yet. But I mean, Rogers last year, like it was a sub 2 ERA and 77 innings split between San Francisco and New York. And you kind of look into it, and I mean the FIP numbers are good. Like this is a guy who doesn't walk anybody. I think it's 77 walks for his career, but it's only I think 13 walks in the past two seasons. He doesn't give up home runs, and that was kind of one thing that we had talked about, not that long ago was kind of what are you going to add to your bullpen if these closers isn't or if these closers aren't the way that you're going to go, and home run suppression was obviously something that the staff as a whole struggled with last year. So now you get a guy who just doesn't give up homers all that often and guy who gets a ton of ground balls. I'm sure he will be thrilled to be pitching in front of Andres Jimenez and Ernie Clement and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It'll be, kind of a great fit for him. So I think when you're looking for a guy who's going to get you outs in 2026, there probably wasn't a ton of options available on the market, quite like Tyler Rogers after Suarez signed the other day.
You know what's funny is all that talk about Framber Valdez being the perfect guy because he generates all these ground balls. And it's the same thought process here. It's the same idea that, it's a guy that's kind of built to pitch in front of the Blue Jays infield. Obviously, Bo Bichette maybe notwithstanding, but it's still even to that kind of end. Just again, a fascinating move. It doesn't blow your doors off, the way that like a Dylan Cease move or even a Cody Ponce move does. But it's just again, makes you maybe scratch the beard a little bit, makes you maybe think, what's going on here? What are they thinking here?
Well, I think you know what they're thinking. They're thinking we're gonna add guys who are gonna give you crazy looks. And I mean, the Chase Lee for Johan Simon deal earlier today, you kind of think, oh, there's a guy who kind of fits into that idea of somebody that's going to be throwing from different angles. And I think, Chase Lee, um, I actually thought when they acquired him, like early in the day, I was like, oh, that means they're probably not going to get Tyler Rogers because you already got the one sidearm guy. But I would imagine Chase Lee, he has options. I would imagine he starts the year in AAA. It's the really interesting conversation is the additions that they made to the rotation, the Cease, the Ponce, kind of crunched the bullpen a little bit with the way that it crunched the rotation. And then they go out and they pick Spencer Miles in the Rule 5 draft, which crunches the bullpen even further. And so right now I think it's like they have 13 or 14 pitchers for 8 spots on this major league roster. And when you look at it, I mean the locks of your bullpen are going to be Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia, Rogers, Louis Varland, and then that the next 4 spots, I probably you put Brendan Little in that group because to me, this signing maybe signals that they aren't going to be going out and grabbing another lefty, considering you commit, this amount of AAV to a single guy, this amount of value to one pitcher, and of course, you're still looking at the position player market. So I would imagine that, I was thinking, a Gregory Soto type, um, a Taylor Rogers, maybe, could have been, coming if they wanted to kind of go for a cheap budget lefty to cut, kind of give them that option in the bullpen. But now, you're looking at Little, Nance, Lauer, Barrios,
It's a lot of
Miles
bodies, man. It's
Bastardo,
just a million
Tiedemann.
dudes.
There's just a ton of guys for not very many spots, and Chase Lee and Braden Fisher and Mason Fluharty and Justin Brule and Paxton Schultz. Like there's just so many arms, and again, great problem to have if you're a major league team. But it's going to be so interesting to kind of see the group that they run out there with on opening day.
It's gonna be really interesting, even to that end, because there's gonna be, quality, talented arms that are gonna start in AAA, and it's gonna be a bit of a case of, hey, if you're not pitching well, then you're not gonna crack the big league club.
They're going for the International League Championship in Buffalo this year with the pitching staff.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good staff.
Um, yeah, I mean for Rogers, like it's so interesting, right? Because it's 2 pitches, it's the sinker, it's the slider, and he's a guy who doesn't really have platoon splits. He's fairly effective against both sides. Eno Sarris kind of tweeted out the thing where it's really fun how he gets lefties out because he throws sliders up, and of course that's the viral clip of I can't remember who's hitting, right? But Rogers throws the pitch, and the guy swings as the ball hits him in the face, and his helmet comes off, and it's just incredible that a guy throwing from down there and throwing that slow is able to fool hitters so significantly. So I think it'll be fun at. I think, the first time that, say, Trey Savage throws 6 innings and John Schneider calls on Tyler Rogers to throw the seventh, you're going to see some absolutely insane swings from hitters at the plate, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of how they manage and what specific role I think Rogers fits into.
A funny thought, the idea of John Schneider coming out of the dugout to call for a reliever. He's not going to have to go like
It
this. He's
does
going to have to go
sound,
like
yeah.
this.
I want to give a shout out while we're here talking about this. In most of my years playing baseball at the University of Calgary, our head coach was Jeff Freeborn, the creator of Sidearm Nation. And I was just thinking of Freebs today. I'm sure he's not listening, but hope he's doing well. Hope this signing's got him fired up. I know we had Tyler Rogers on the Sidearm Nation podcast, so we've got a soft spot for sidearmers on this pod. We'll say that. But yeah, good signing. Can't really say too much about it. I mean, you have any extra thoughts on Chase Lee in that deal, the Johan Simon trade?
Well, I guess here's what I would ask you. Do you think that this signing impacts any Bo Bichette reunion discussion?
I don't think so. I mean, they're obviously just adding payroll. Like it seems like they're if they end up in the Mets and Dodgers discussion, then so be it. They are going for it. And I think this, also kind of applies to this news today that I guess kind of slips under the radar. What a newsy sports day. Quinn Hughes gets traded, the Oilers make a bunch of trades, and of course we are not a hockey podcast, but it's something that happens. And Mark Shapiro gets extended by the Blue Jays today, or they officially announce his 5-year extension. So we got a little bit of a press tour from Edward Rogers today too, which was fun to read what he says sometimes. And obviously their financial commitment is there to getting back to where they were this year, and hopefully 2 outs further. So we'll kind of see what's next. It sounds like they are still going to be in that market. I don't know what to make of Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette. I still feel like it's likely that it's maybe one, but I don't know what to make of both, and specifically, Bichette's market, I think.
Yeah, the sense certainly isn't that it's going to be both, but you look at a guy like a Jeff Pass and saying that it's not out of the realm of possibilities, and then you start to maybe dream a little bit. It's really just a question of, you know, are they going to have the opportunity to go out and get both of these guys? It sounds like the Jays are, you know, if not there yet, could get to the point where they're ready to give Kyle Tucker $400 million. And you think about, Bo Bichette's market, and you know, is he a guy that they're going to be waiting on the Tucker market for? Well, is there a chance that another team kind of jumps that market? Well, are the Jays going to get the chance to respond? Will they respond? There's still the offseason, to me, there's still just maybe one or two moves away from, filing this thing away as done and dusted.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's gonna be, I think you hear, like, I mean, even Shy has kind of said, they're confident with their offensive group, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because they have, we talk about all the pitching depth that they have, but they also kind of have this group of outfielders who is kind of the same talented. They have the same kind of talented depth there, right? Like right now, their outfield, it's, in that mix is like Nathan Lucas, Dalton Varsho, George Springer, Anthony Santander, Miles Straw, Davis Schneider, and then you even go down to AAA and it's like Joey Loperfido, RJ Schreck, Johendrick Pinango. Like they have all these different pieces there, and it's, I don't imagine that there's much like depth going to be added in the coming months here before spring training starts. Like I'm sure that there'll be the signing here and there to kind of add pieces along the edges, but I think this roster, you're just kind of looking for the cherry on top, right? Like it's the Kyle Tucker and the Bo Bichette, because you don't need to go out there and be looking for, say, a Gino Suarez or, some first baseman or like a Carlos Santana or, kind of some free agents of that mix. Like you are pretty set with your core and you're just trying to kind of raise the ceiling at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's the right thing to do. This is a team, again, as we've said repeatedly, this close, and bringing in a guy like a Tucker or bringing in back a guy like a Bo Bichette, really, you start to be really comfortable with where this team has a chance to be come spring training and on.
What did you make of the Shapiro extension?
Think it was kind of in the cards. We'd kind of heard that it was likely done almost like mid-season, and just as things kind of heated up towards the end of the year, it just wasn't something that was going to be on the radar. But a well-deserved extension, a bit of a shocker if you look at even as much as like 18 months ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
no
think this would
kidding.
have been necessarily in the cards, but after the last year and how things kind of turned around and how the Blue Jays really captured the imagination, you get the sense that this one was definitely on the horizon.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to add there. Obviously, it was a deal that seemed more likely to get across the finish line than to not do. And that sounds like that's also going to be the case for John Schneider here eventually. You got any final Tyler Rogers, Chase Lee, Mark Shapiro thoughts before we put a wrap on this one?
Fun off season, a lot of
Yeah,
lot of action.
it's
Blue Jays have been
incredible
in the
that
mix here.
we're sitting here and it's like they go out and they spend more on a reliever than they did on Jeff Hoffman. And we're kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Considering, I think when they handed out the Chad Green contract, you're like, wow, that's like the most this front office has spent on a reliever. And now they've gone out and topped that twice over in the past 2 years. So, any thoughts on Rogers' role? I think that'll be interesting. You think like more fireman? You think there's any chance that he's the closer over Hoffman, or is it going to kind of
I
be,
I don't
him,
know. I mean,
Jimmy?
I don't think it's out of the question that he closes games for these Blue Jays. But
Over under 8.5 saves.
I only say under because the way that you can best utilize a guy like him is very much situationally. To me, he doesn't feel like a fireman closer. He feels like
Yeah,
a guy that you're gonna put out against the guys that are gonna put the ball in the ballpark. You don't need him to shut down the ninth inning against the 6, 7, 8 hitters. You're gonna want him in the seventh or the eighth inning against the 2 hole, 3 hole guy. Uh,
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I do think that you're going to see him pick up saves, but I would be pretty surprised if he is their primary closer to begin next season.
I wonder if they just go by committee. Him, Rogers, Hoffman, Garcia. Could see it. But I
Yeah.
would imagine that Hoffman kind of gets the
Are we
the
sure
bulk of the
Jimmy
role.
Garcia is going to be in that discussion, even as early as like the start of next year?
Um, I mean, we'll see what he looks like in spring training. I think that's one that you tuck away. That's a conversation that we tuck away for March 25th or something after we've seen him pitch a couple times.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I
um,
think I get it.
yeah, I think like with Rogers, it's a good point that it is going to be situational, right? Because like if it's the bottom of the ninth and your bases loaded, winning run on third with no outs, you're not going to bring Tyler Rogers into the game, right? Because that's a ball in play, and you're trying to get strikeouts in situations like that. So, it will be fun to see. Before we go, I want to get you. We're going to predict what the opening day bullpen looks like right now, given what we know here on December 13th. So we know Hoffman, Garcia, Rogers, Varland. Those four, we can lock them in.
Yeah.
What are we thinking for the other four?
I like Braden Fisher. I feel like he's got a good shot.
So Fisher,
Um,
I mean, the guys without options, right? So that's
yeah.
Miles, Bastardo, Nance, and Lauer.
I don't think that any of the I don't think either of the Rule 5 guys are on this bullpen
Okay.
or on this opening day roster, excuse me, in the bullpen.
Okay.
I like Brennan Little, obviously. Um, Seems like Eric Lauer is
Okay.
likely because of the option stuff.
So
And then you've
Lauer would be on my list as well, so we'll put him in.
But then, beyond that, like I mean, I guess it's Jose Barrios because, so I think that's eight, right? I mean,
That's your eight.
I
Your
think
eight.
that's it, right? I think the one kind of funky one there, I guess you could say, is you're losing maybe like Tommy Nance or whatnot for a guy like a Braden Fisher, just because I think that you can leave Braden Fisher at home, but you at the end of the day, you really, I think you want to bring your best guys. And I'm not convinced Tommy Nance is a guy that most teams are going to be swarming at to pick off the waiver wire.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think if you put Tommy Nance through waivers on March 31st next year, I think opening day is like March 27th, isn't it? So maybe March 26th, you put Tommy Nance on waivers when there are a handful, a ton of relievers available on waivers. I think there'd probably be a decent chance that he would make it through, considering I believe he will be 35 or approaching 35 at that time. And again, he threw, you know, sparingly in the major leagues last year. So I think that's a guy you could probably risk on waivers. And then the two Rule 5 guys, I'll go out on a limb and I'll say that one of them makes the opening day roster.
So give me your eight.
Hoffman, Garcia, Rogers, Varland, Little, Lauer, Miles.
Barrios, I
I guess
guess.
it's got to be. I mean, at this point, it's Barrios, but I would imagine that they kind of have a resolution with their starting five by that point. So we'll see. Yariel Rodriguez, he pitches his way back in.
Claws back in, comes back to spring throwing 99.
um,
Uh,
that would be crazy, but I'll round out my eight and I'll say Mason Fluharty because we are flu fans on this side of the pod. So Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Obviously, so many months, so many spring training games between opening day, World Baseball Classic games, everything that, so many things that could impact this. But nonetheless, exciting that the Blue Jays continue to give us stuff to talk about in the wee hours of the morning and in the wee hours of the off season, I suppose. But it's been pretty busy. There's been almost more action in the last couple days than there was during the winter meetings. So.
I don't think the
Uh,
Jays are done.
no, no, definitely not. There should be stuff to come. I still think that now they are pretty clearly in on the big game hunting.
That time of the season, that time of the off season.
All right. Well, with that, that is going to do it for us here today at the Bird's Eye View podcast. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening along on the audio provider of your choice, make sure to drop a follow and review. You can follow us all on Twitter. I am at Worden_Zach. Jori is at Jori Negin-Shecter. And the pod is at BEV_pod. Thank you so much for listening.